Hi, and welcome to this installment of Frank and Mary here in Southborough. For those of you who haven't seen this show before, my name is Art Bergeron. I'm an attorney. I do elder law. I work at a firm called Myrick O'Connell, which is actually the biggest firm outside of Boston, but we have a fairly large office with 20 lawyers here in Westborough. But this show is not about law. It is about my friends Frank and Mary. If you've been to any presentations I've done here at the Southborough Senior Center, you know Frank and Mary are my make-believe couple and their kids, Peter, Paul, and Mary Jr. And Frank and Mary's goal in life is to live in their house until they die. And if they're in Southborough, they want to stay here. They don't want to go to San Diego where the kids move to. They don't want to travel. They want to stay here. So the purpose of the show is to let you know who the people are and what the programs are that you should know about if you're like Frank and Mary and you want to stay in Southborough. You want to stay kind of in your hometown. And so to understand that, because I live actually in faraway Marlborough, I asked my friend Doug Peck, who I know is from Southborough, right, and is right here, to really find people who are really, and I'm sure you've watched these shows, so you've seen some great guests. Doug's got a great person today, who actually I've also met. But, so who do we have here today, and what are we going to talk about?
Well, we have what's called I'm going to use the old term, geriatric care manager, because people can understand what a care manager does, I think, pretty well. Right. Rebecca Wild-Wesley, who is from the area and has been practicing for a few years here.
6 years,
6 years, okay.
In the aging space.
In the aging space.
Name of my company.
Okay. And your background is?
So I'm a registered nurse,
okay,
and I have a master's in gerontology, which makes me a gerontologist, and I also am certified as a care manager, which gives me an extra set of skills and competencies around being able to advise people as to what the best course of action is when aging becomes difficult.
Okay. So, and I think that's what we want to talk about today is sort of the broad range, not of your services, but the broad range of positions you find yourself in, talking to different people, from sort of the more benign to what happens during a crisis.
Right.
So maybe we'll start off with someone who, just like you were talked about, the family now is scattered, like so many families are.
Right.
And mom and or dad is sort of living alone now in Southborough.
Right, maybe Frank has died and now it's Mary and she's in the house.
And she's in the house by herself.
And her relatives are gone and her neighbors have all gone away. They're all new people,
And she may or may not be driving or getting to the point where the kids are thinking she shouldn't be driving. So, they call you for a little bit of advice on, so what do we do? Because we just don't feel comfortable about leaving her home all day alone. She's got Lifeline and everything else, but that's for emergencies. We want to try to prevent those kind of emergencies.
Well, and I think if we go back to before Frank died, we might not have realized, or his children might not have realized, I kind of think of the husband and wife as they're kind of propping each other up.
Okay. And
then Frank dies and she goes down, but we didn't realize that Frank was doing so much.
Yeah.
Because he just absorbed that as part of the marriage, that's what they do, is they covered, not necessarily in a negative way, but they covered for each other. They filled each other's deficits.
Right.
Exactly. And then everybody thinks everything's fine, and then they leave and go back to their homes and their jobs, and that's when they start to realize that Mary is not doing anything, and she's more confused on the phone, and when they go do a visit, they realize she's not eating, or she's lost weight, and the doctor's office is calling because she's not come to her appointments. And it might be that generally she's not as bad as what that could originally look like, but because Frank handled the calendar and the driving and did all of that.
Maybe the bills too, even.
The bills aren't getting paid, exactly.
And of course, Mary's depressed because Frank's gone.
She's sad.
So
She's
why
grieving.
do I want to leave this house? This house is where Frank
we
and I
built
were
this
all the
house.
time.
Yes, this was our home. We raised our children here. So yes, that's often when we get involved. And so a care manager makes visits in a person's home. We don't have them come to where our office is. We go to their home, which is that great opportunity to be able to take a look at what's your space like? Is it physically safe? As well as what do you like to do? And is social isolation really a part of this process? And what's it triggering, and what can we do to help with that? And I think your services are often one of the first things that many care managers consider is, how do we get somebody in the home to be able to be a companion, to look like a friend, to be able to have those friendly visits and something to look forward to?
So why is social isolation becoming such a problem? Not just because they have physically they seem to be okay. You said maybe sad. But what happens when somebody becomes sort of socially isolated?
Right. Well, and I think if we look as to why it is people might choose to stay at home, they may have problems with hearing, and it's making it more difficult for them to join into a group. They may have trouble keeping up with the conversation. Things may be too loud. It may be too overwhelming. And that feeling of dis-ease is worse when they're out, when they feel like they're not coping, so they just stay home. It's just easier to stay
home. It is.
It's comfortable.
And I know from my own parents, and you get older, that's what you do. I mean, you kind of stay with your spouse, right? And as you say, it's very comfortable, but that's who you talk to. So even in terms of talking to other people, you lose that kind of skill set.
Right.
You just don't
You
you're not
do.
used to it.
Exactly. You
You're
lose
not
that
used to
skill
it.
set and that talking. And then they'll say, I really just like my own company.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I'm kind of an introvert, although most older people don't say that.
Right.
But they just like their own company, and they
Yeah.
don't like crowds.
Yeah.
And so what's happened is they just avoid all exposures to people. And so we try with, let's expose you to one person. You know, let's get someone who can come in and do some things with you and go out for coffee and read the paper. Maybe we'll go over photo albums. We'll talk about your family. And that just starts to kind of peel back that how to be social again.
Okay, and that person helps them do that, brings them out of the house into a senior center,
Right.
or maybe just even meeting other friends that they haven't seen for a while.
And actually, you'd asked me, why is that a risk factor? I think I kind of gave the why it happens that we end up getting isolated. And then the social isolation in itself really leads to more depression. Depression may start it, and then it exacerbates the depression. And certainly cognitive changes. If you're not being stimulated, if you're not talking to other people, if you're not doing new things, your brain just needs to be exercised a little. So, and you know, you're not taking care of yourself, and maybe you don't get dressed every day, and now maybe you're not paying attention to hygiene and all of those things. You have to look good when you go out, but if I'm home, I don't need to do all of that.
And you can get up really late.
That's
and you can go to bed really early.
And I don't need to really eat. I'll just have some toast, and then you start to lose some weight. And so it's a slippery slope, they say.
And sometimes they don't even want to go out for a walk by themselves because it's no fun to go out by yourself.
Right.
Nobody likes to walk.
Right.
Well, they do for a little bit, but for the
Right.
most part, it's much nicer to go out to a park or
Right.
someplace with somebody else.
Right.
You walk around, you can sit and talk, you can people watch a little bit, but you don't want to do that by yourself
That's
because
right.
you've never done it by
That's
yourself.
right. And who are you going to come home to?
Who are you going to come home
Right.
to?
Although I think one of the things that you said I think was really great was just also having somebody that can introduce you or reintroduce you to, like, the senior center.
Right.
So that
Be a
there may
partner.
very well be that you end up with a circle of players that maybe you didn't see since grammar school because you're Frank and Mary, because
Right.
maybe you moved from out of town, but maybe you've just been here.
Yes.
And so suddenly there's folks that you can kind of connect
And
with.
you know them.
Yeah, yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's what we often will use to entice. These aren't a bunch of strangers. These
Right.
are all your neighbors.
Right.
And you probably have known them for a very long time, and now you're going to know them in a different place. I know sometimes people say they don't want to go to a senior center
Right.
because everybody there is old.
Right.
Right.
Well, they're your peers, you know.
Yes.
You know, and
Yeah.
you'll look past that quickly when you see their faces.
There's
Right.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
But it's, I'm sorry,
Oh,
go
no,
ahead.
no.
Sometimes it's just that the person's giving just a little bit of a nudge to get the
Right.
person out of the house because
Right.
when you don't feel well, and sadness is a really big part of it,
It's
you
huge.
just don't feel like going out to see somebody else. But
Right.
somebody's going
It's
to
work.
say, it's work. Let's get out a little bit, we'll just
Right.
go out for half an hour and do something. And it sort of
Right.
builds, it's a step-by-step process is
Very
what
slow.
you're saying.
You have to be very patient.
Rather than sort of waiting for a crisis to happen, you're getting
Right.
someone used to
Right.
doing it. And it's really kind of preventative.
That's right.
And, I
medicine.
suppose, and if you're married and Frank has died, it's really, it's a matter of kind of getting reoriented to the fact that you're no longer with Frank, but it's really now looking at the rest of your life.
There's a world.
And I think
Yeah.
that's one of the hardest things,
Yeah.
of course, if Frank has died, is that you now understand that you will too.
Right.
And so you're kind of looking at the rest of your life, and you know that it ends when you die, so
Right.
that's right. It
Right.
doesn't end, you live, but to be kind of getting going again, right?
Right.
So can we just talk about that kind of next kind of place to be? Because there are many people we know who, somebody died, and then they go through all of this and they kind of get over it, right? Or, but sometimes not. But
Right.
then you're living your life. But then, you keep aging, and so other things happen. So I know from talking to folks myself in the business, there were kind of two kind of directions of that. There's, I've got a physical problem, right? Or I've got some memory issues, right? And so in those situations where either you've had that stroke and you've come back home and so mentally you're still okay, but you just can't get around.
Navigate, yeah.
Or from that whole cluster of issues where you've really got where you may have Parkinson's or whatever, you may have some really now some more serious memory issues. In those cases, how do you deal with those? What do you do with folks? How does it work?
So as to services in the home or as to general next steps? All of the above.
All of the above, because that's the interesting thing
That's
to me
right.
about. That's why both of us are
Right.
talking to you all the time.
Right.
Because people will come in with a whole host of problems. And you say the only one who can deal holistically with all of this
That's
is
right.
the geriatric care manager.
Right.
So
I think we had spoken earlier about the companion. I tend to look at the companion as that first opportunity to have a stranger come in your home. It's very difficult for many people to have a stranger. I kind of think of companions as paid friends. So they do a lot of the work of building the relationship and kind of teaching people how to kind of get back on the horse again when it comes to being a friend. At the same time, in parallel, we're trying to take care of the social isolation. Have you been to the doctor lately? Are you taking your medications? Are you eating well? What's in the fridge? We try to look at all of that stuff. It's not just the companion. And the companion can be part of a lot of those other services. They can drive to the doctor's appointment. The care manager can meet them at the appointment to make sure things are going well. You can go grocery shopping together with a companion. You can plan a meal. You can start to do some of those activities that kind of bring some life to you. And so that's that very basic, but it's like, let's tidy everything up. Let's make sure. Again, we find ourselves seeking the services of an elder law attorney because now that Frank has died, nobody changed healthcare proxy, nobody did all the rest of that formal paperwork that allows the children now to become decision makers in the event that that's needed. And you just start to increase, I think we try to get people out, so it might be the next step once we kind of have that good companion. Maybe we look at a day program, somewhere where they can go and socialize and be with other people and they're getting a good meal and somebody's seeing them every day or on a regular basis so they know if they have a sense of well-being, if they've been able to accomplish more social skills and return to that.
what is a day program?
Day programs can,
For example.
well, they're like a senior center. I might even say a senior center on steroids. Senior centers are where people can usually get to a senior center on their own. Maybe they have a van that picks them up and they have programs during the day. And usually it's not continuous. It's you come in for a program and then you might leave. You might get a meal together. But if you go to a social day program or you go to a medical day program, those are different programs paid for differently. But it's just an opportunity with a very formal structure. You arrive at a certain time, whether a bus brought you or a family member. You do an activity in the morning, general orientation. You talk about the news. You do some exercise. You might have some coffee first thing. Then at lunchtime, you have a good meal that maybe you've helped prepare or maybe has been served to you by helpers who are really part of your group. And then you have an afternoon activity.
Okay.
Am I summarizing pretty well?
Yeah, it's a more structured day.
Yeah,
So there
definitely.
are activities for them to do. I know some
Exactly.
of them do music therapy,
Absolutely.
art
Pet
therapy,
therapy.
pet therapy.
Yeah. Go
and
on
they're,
trips.
And they're social because they're
Yeah.
seeing generally the same people
Yes.
every time that they
Right.
go there. So they're developing some acquaintances
Right.
and some friendships.
And
yeah.
among their peers, as well as they have caregivers who they may start to build a relationship with and they can talk to. And for the family, then that means that they have another set of eyes who are looking at their mom. And to be able to say, she's making friends, she's looks good when she comes in, she's wearing different clothes every day. So you have an additional set
Right.
of reports that come
Right.
back that reassure the family that things are going
Right.
well. And then if we go to a medical program, looks very much the same, except you have a nurse. And that means someone's checking your weights and they're checking your blood pressure and they're perhaps making sure if you need to have physical therapy or occupational therapy that happens there. So and sometimes people get their showers at a
Right.
medical day program.
Right, and if they're diabetic, it's a good place to make sure
Blood
that
sugar testing,
yeah.
special diets.
Right.
But it looks like a nice day. It's just a lot of work is going on behind the scenes. And we often look at adult day programming as an alternative to prolong the amount of time somebody can live at home
Okay.
versus having to go to a higher level of care. If
Right.
that's assisted living, if that's moving in with a family member, if that's a nursing home, which is a real last resort. But it's an alternate way to get health care and social care to be able to allow you to still go to sleep at night.
And can you just talk, you mentioned assisted living, can you just kind of talk about that? So for so many people like Mary, who is at home, right? And she really doesn't want to leave, she really doesn't want to leave her home, right? But even if she were leaving her home, she doesn't want to leave her home to go far away.
Right.
So her next best ideal, I keep thinking of old friends of our family who was 96 and finally decided that she really needed, she decided she really didn't want to be driving anymore because she was getting neuropathy in her feet, and if she wasn't driving, she didn't want to be in that house.
Right.
Because she said, now I can't get around.
Right.
Because a lot of times people, even if they can't walk very well, the reason for the car is that's how you get every place, because you can't walk, right?
Right.
But she wanted to stay around, so she ended up coming to an assisted living here in Westboro, Highlands, which she loved.
Right.
We just had her 98th birthday.
Right.
You know, so how do you? Because that's one of the things that you do, right? Is help people really
When's it time?
see whether you can adapt your home successfully in order to not move, or alternatively, which assisted living might work. And so how do you figure that out?
Well, I think in part it's nice to know what the ultimate diagnoses are. That kind of gives us an idea of what path we're on.
Like what's driving you to need to be moving.
Because the goal really is if you have to leave your home, and that's going to be a really hard thing to do, you don't want to move and you don't want to move again.
Right.
So you want to be able to be on the path for the place to next live that will be where you die. That would be the goal. Which we don't all like to talk about. I'm moving to the place where I'm going to die, but
as opposed to where you are, which is the place, because ideally, there's that great statistic that 80% of people want to die at home.
Right.
20% of people die at home.
Right.
Right. About 40% die in the hospital.
Logistically, it's very difficult to do.
Right. Because a lot die in the hospital. Others die in assisted living communities, which has become your home. Right. Or in a nursing home.
It's very much your home. Exactly right. And I think many people find that when they stop driving, that's one of the biggest incentives for moving to another place that offers the kinds of services that assisted livings can offer. Independent livings, maybe a person could move to an independent living and be 55 or 60 years old, still fully working, but they have meals provided and housekeeping and a lovely apartment and a bus that drives you places, if that's supportive. And that same level of opportunity is offered at the assisted living level, where perhaps now you're getting some personal care, and you also have a bus that can take you to doctor's appointments, to grocery stores, which you really don't need because they cook for you.
Right. But
just the outings. People like to go shopping and make that part of their normal week. So I think what we need to know, and care managers work very hard on, what's the diagnosis, what is it we're trying to fulfill, why can't home work, but ultimately, I think a lot of times that person who can't drive, it's very difficult now to be socially involved unless you put full-time care in, and you make sure they're coming out of the house. And ultimately, you can never really socialize as much at home, even with private care, even with family, than you can when you're living in a more congregate setting, or a setting where you're with a lot of other people. And you open your door and you're out within a group of people who are going to look for you and who are going to know you're there.
So that's one of your advantages, is to sort of make that kind of evaluation along with the family.
Right.
Hear the family's response, hear the person's response, and then decide. But also, being in the healthcare field, if there is a diagnosis, either physical or mental, what the progression is likely to look like.
That's right.
So you're going to look out and say, well, in the next year, this is likely what's going to happen.
So let's get ready for it now.
So let's get ready for it now.
Right.
Maybe time in 2 months to move in. So you
Right.
try to not make it too early or too late.
It's the
You're
right
trying
timing.
to avoid crises, in
Yes.
other words, at this point.
That's right, exactly.
Okay.
And I would say care managers are not all nurses. Many care managers are social workers. And I think a lot of times we operate knowing a little bit about what the other profession does. And so social workers have the same set of skills. All of us care managers know how to do a really comprehensive assessment.
Okay.
We know how to get medical records, we know how to read them, we know how to interpret what that means to be able to find the right place. And our job partly is to find where are the right places, you know, what's the best place, and the right place for you might not be the right place for you. So we need to know that person to be able to give them confidence that this move is the right move.
Because you're saving that person and their family so much time.
Right.
Because, you know, who wants to open what used to be in our old days, the yellow pages?
Right.
Who wants to start going through the list of assisted living communities and this and that?
Right.
And then start shopping them.
And looking at 10 at a time.
And know that all you're doing at that time is you're walking in the front door.
Right.
You're seeing the chandelier effect. You know,
Lovely.
oh, that's all great.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
But the real question is to
Right.
have somebody with experience with that community that says, oh, you know, this may not be right for you.
Right.
Right. Which
Right.
is it's such an important filter.
Right, and I think it's that match, you know, that we're, you know, sometimes it's just physical. We're in the home, and then we look at the assisted livings. If you don't live in a chandelier home, are you going to want to live in a chandelier assisted living?
Yeah.
So you're trying to match how you decorated your home is probably that's where you're comfortable. So you're looking at all of that, and I think.
That's a great.
Yeah.
So I might also propose that I think that's the benefit of a care manager is that we're in your home and then we're in those facilities. So we know this. We walk in these places every day. We walk into your home. We're very personal. We're not providing this kind of support telephonically. We know where we're sending you. We know the options. And when we find an assisted living for you, I always want to make sure to add the plug, the fact that when a care manager makes a decision on your behalf or helps you to make that decision, they're not getting any benefit from
No financial
the
benefit.
receiving
No
residents.
skin in the game.
Right.
No skin in the game.
Right.
Our game is we want you to be happy. We want you to move once.
Right.
We want this to be successful.
That's exactly when I tell folks. I say it's the same thing as hiring your lawyer.
Right.
It's like the person, they've got no skin in the game. They're just trying to help you figure out how to deal with all these other players.
That's right.
Because all the other players, they may be totally sincere or not.
Exactly.
But the point is, there's some dollars involved, and so it may be skewing the way people look, right? Whereas you want somebody that can just look the way you want to be,
Right.
the way you want to be looking.
Well, because that Mary is our client.
Yes.
And her daughters or her sons, whoever it is who lives in San Diego and not in Southborough, you know, for that family, we need to make this right for them so that they have some peace of mind. They know things are safe. She's starting to recover. We know that she's not at risk of falling and malnourishment.
Yeah.
You know, she's recovering and coming back to some kind of version of herself, which might be a different version than she was when she was married.
Right.
She's going to get a chance to find out who she is on her own.
Right.
And what a gift that could be for her family to get to know her in a different way and for her to relate in a different way.
If she's in the right situation.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Lots
really
of moving
true.
parts.
And that's the complexity of it nowadays. It's not just, it used to be they'd go to a nursing home if they were really ill, and that would be it. They don't even have not many nursing homes anymore. There's long-term care, short-term care, and there's even, if you can talk a little bit about continuing care communities,
Right.
because those are sometimes a good place for people who we know are going to have some really significant physical difficulties as they go through. So it's really trying to weigh and understand that. I mean, I've been through that with my mother and mother-in-law. It's just so complex. You don't know. Not that anybody's trying to sell you anything, but they do have skin in the game.
People are trying to sell you.
They're trying to sell you. They want to fill
That's
beds.
their job.
There's turnover because
Yeah.
it's people are passing away, and so they need to keep it full.
Right.
That's why they're in business.
That's
But
right.
you're stepping back and saying, well, maybe this is not the right place for you because you know the little parts that are so important.
Right.
But
Right.
they often get overlooked when you look at the chandelier effect, and they have a chef for the diner and everything else. So,
yes, exactly.
So, I mean,
Great dining options. Some have
Right.
farm to table. Some have dine any
I love
time.
farm.
right.
Now, can I ask you though, because this has been so interesting that I don't want to run out of time though before we talk about what I think is a really important piece of what you do. Can you talk about the help that you can give to folks if they're knowing that, I don't want to say death is tomorrow, but death is on the horizon. They're in, say, the last year of their lives.
Which
but
we only know in
Which you only know in
hindsight.
hindsight.
Yeah,
You never know
right.
exactly the day or
That's
the
right,
hour. We
right.
do not know, so
That's
always
right.
be ready. But we kind of talk about it because once again, while we don't know the day or the hour, what we can be almost positive of now is that we're not going to drop dead. Nobody drops dead. You really have this period now where you may have some diminished capacity for various reasons.
Right.
So, but you're kind of looking, you're looking not necessarily forward to it, but you're looking ahead to it and saying, how am I living my life now?
Right.
If I know that there truly is a kind of a finite number of days left, even if it's like a year or a year, how can you help with that?
So I think
figure that out.
If we have that time, what we like to do is get all the housekeeping done. If that's about living in your home and providing the level of services you need, then and if you're going to your doctor and all of that other stuff is done, we have that out of the way. I think we, in parallel, often try to make sure if there's a birthday, let's get people together. Let's celebrate that birthday. What are the kinds of things we could do to help this family repair any hurt feelings or many misunderstandings? Because we know after mom dies that children will be left, and if they haven't finished their work with their parents, they're going to carry that on. And so I think being able to encourage conversations where there's healing done, being able to reconnect that senior if church was important or some kind of spiritual or faith life was important, let's get that, let's pull that back again. Maybe Frank didn't care about that kind of stuff, but Mary really did. And so let's figure that out. That's and let's find her a community or find her a visitor who would be able to come and give her that kind of reassurance as to what's important. I spend time really. Let's do a party. What are the things that seem like a party to you? And if it's that I want to just have my grandkids come over and I want to be able to hold them in my lap, and don't do it just once. Just keep doing it. We should enhance those times for families to be together or best friends to connect. And we might even do some work with helping them to write their history. How to do a reminiscence project to be able to tape a story about how you and Dad met, and that the family would like to know that.
What a great idea.
Yeah, it is.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah.
That
I think of you more as sort of on the clinical side of
That's
things.
right.
But there's
This is
another
the fun
big
stuff.
piece that's that's very, very important because there's often a lot of unresolved issues. With family. That's for sure.
And aside from the unresolved issues, which might have more clinical expertise, the companion is a perfect person to say, tell me about when you and Frank met. And they might be willing to record that or to take notes. The companion is really a person who can really help to be able to be the friendly person. They don't do the hard work. And right now I have somebody who's at the end of her life, and her companion, even though we have 24-hour care in a living situation that's very supported, we still have her companion come in. So this person's been her friend for 2 years. So that person's a constant, and we introduce that person early in order to be able to make the quality of life better. So that's right till the end. That's what we hope for.
So that's your ultimate goal, is quality of life.
Absolutely.
So, because we know they're getting close to the end. And
it's the quality of their life.
It's
their standard, not my standard.
And the point is to accept the fact that you close to the end doesn't mean like in an hour. It means like
not
this
hospice maybe. Not even hospice.
But it might be, though, you're going to advise when hospice might be important. And or the new piece now to the puzzle, it keeps getting more pieces, is palliative care. To say, okay, Mom has cancer or whatever, but we're not doing any treatments anymore, but she still needs some palliative care. Bringing that in and knowing what that
symptoms,
treating her symptoms, making her comfortable, but knowing what that entails and how to explain it to the family. Because I know some family members say,
it sounds like
it's
hospice,
the end. It sounds like hospice.
Right.
It's going to be the end. Why don't we continue doing that? Those are tough issues to deal with.
And I think those are terms, palliative care, hospice, we talk about early before it's necessary, so that people get used to that idea. They hear it, they understand what it is. Oh, it's not for me right now. But then they remember when you bring it up again, maybe this now is time to talk about that. So sometimes we're a bit of a broken record because we know that if we can lay that language down early on, that they can start to see that maybe it's time now. And they've had time to think about it and make it part of their experience.
It's not a crisis anymore. They want to be thoughtful about this.
Exactly.
And you can say that you're really trying to enjoy every day.
Now you're not.
Right.
and I think that's where you can be so helpful in terms of getting the family wrapped around the fact that, look, it's about living the rest of your life.
Right.
It's not about becoming immortal.
Right.
Right. And so let's focus on that. Right. As opposed to this other. I mean, I was very fortunate to watch. I had an old partner from Marlborough, my partner David Gabois, who had got a diagnosis, had cancer. They opened him up. They said, sorry, you're not. The good news is, it was slow growing, right? And so you've got some more time. The bad news is it was slow growing, so we can't do anything. And he just accepted that and said, okay, I'm going to live the rest of my life. I don't want a lot of interventions. I don't want chemo if it's going to make me nauseous. I'm going to live the rest of my life. And in hindsight, you talk to him, you talk to his wife, you talk to the Mary and this wonderful woman. They were so close. They said it was great because it was this great relief. Because we had all this time to really, really be together, which is. Yeah. Now I'm just going to mention one thing. So I was calling Rebecca the other day, and I said, we need to be getting together. Oh, I need to stop at the store. I need to pick up. Was it toilet paper? I promised this woman. It was kind of like in the last not the last day, but the last weeks of her life. Yeah. So I promised her, you're never going to run out of toilet paper. That's a great geriatric care, man.
It is.
Right?
Yeah. This has been great.
This has been terrific.
Yeah, this has been a good.
Ending with toilet paper.
That's really good.
I'm not sure. We'll remember that. What was the toilet paper episode?
Just shows you to what lengths you will go.
Absolutely,
exactly.
We do.
We do, absolutely.
So Doug, once again, a great guest, and I appreciate your input into this because you're dealing with this kind of stuff all the time yourself.
Yep.
Rebecca, thanks a million.
It's fun.
For people to really kind of understand this kind of role, which can be a really important role in people's lives.
It is.
Really, really important. So
Okay.
thank you. Thanks, Doug.
You're welcome.
Great.
Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next installment of Frank and Mary here in Southborough. Thanks very much.